My friends, for this video, I'm looking at every single non-care package weapon in Apex Legends, and I'm looking at every single default iron sight that is a non-care package weapon, comparing them, seeing which ones are the worst, seeing which ones are the best. That is right, people, I'm going through 21 weapons. My friends, in Apex Legends, we have some really good iron sights, such as the Sentinel, which has a nice little perfect dot to snipe your enemies. But then we also have some absolutely disgusting, horrific iron sights, such as the G7 and Spitfire. Like, who in their right minds would make the G7 or Spitfire iron sights? Who in the heck made that? Also, people, I'm gonna put a link to my Twitch in the description. Go follow my Twitch. I'm gonna have a couple of Twitch clips of me using some iron sights in this video, so it'd be really cool if you go follow my Twitch. But anyways, my friends, let's get into ranking every single iron sight in Apex Legends from worst to best. I'm Alarmix, and let's get into the video. Starting off at number 21, the most horrific iron sight in Apex Legends, in my opinion. I may have already spoiled this one a little bit, but at number 21, we have the Spitfire. These iron sights make me absolutely sick to my stomach. Who in their right mind would put together iron sights like this? Not only is there a U metal shape around the holographic dot in the middle of the iron sight, but there's a nice disgusting circle around everything to make sure everything is blocked and you cannot see while you're aiming. During the long process of ranking all of these iron sights, I was kind of thinking that the iron sights have to fit the weapon. So, for example, the Spitfire, it's full auto, there's going to be a lot of recoil, so that actual metal that's in the way, their gun's probably going to be flying everywhere, and it's going to actually end up blocking the target quite a bit. I think there are very few completely unusable iron sights in Apex. I think the Spitfire is one of those. Moving on to the second worst iron sights in all of Apex Legends, Respawn screwed over another LMG, the Devotion. Just as the Spitfire, there's some pretty disgusting metal in the shape of a U, but what makes this metal extra icky is it actually curls up towards the holographic dot. I really don't get the point of having the U shape around the holographic dot. Why can't they just, like, destroy that part of it? It's no mystery that when you're using the Spitfire or the Devotion, you're probably gonna want some sort of sight on it. There also is an additional U shape on the inside of this tiny U to make sure that you're not gonna be hitting your targets when you're using the Devotion iron sights. My people, sights are only sights, you know, you can get kills with whatever sight you're using, but if you're getting kills with the Spitfire and Devotion iron sights, you know, I guess you're just a god. Props to you. The third worst iron sight in Apex IMO is the Hemloks. So on this one, there is a pretty conveniently placed red dot in the middle of these iron sights. When I picked the Hemlok up right off the drop, I've had some pretty decent success using the single fire mode with the Hemlok's iron sights. But when I really run into trouble using these ones is when I don't have a barrel and I'm trying to use the burst mode. So, you know, there is that pretty conveniently placed red dot, but when you're bursting way up in the air, there's absolutely no peripheral vision, you know, right outside of that circle that you get. For me, when I'm using the Hemlok, once I get like a bruiser or a 1x or a 3x, pretty much anything that's not the iron sights, this gun goes from pretty much 0 to 100. Sometimes when I get the Hemlok off the drop and I do not have a sight, I just try to hip fire the thing or just go shove the gun in the face so I don't even have to aim. The next sight on the list that's slightly less disgusting than the Hemlok sights is the charge rifles. So yeah, the charge rifles iron sights is kind of like just a beautiful holographic sight, but those kinds of sights are meant for extreme close range, and what kind of idiot is going to use the charge rifle in extreme close range? I mean, yeah, eventually you're going to get caught up in close range and are going to have to use the charge rifle, and you know, in those situations, it's going to do you okay. But the charge rifle is probably one of the worst guns in the entire game in close range. Like, people pretty much, I mean, everything, like the P20, the Mozambique, I would pretty much rather have anything else other than the charge rifle at close range. Once you get to long range, I've had some okay success with these iron sights. You know, I mean, it's not a horrible iron sight, it's just that I feel that the little red dots around the center of this sight, you know, just kind of block a lot of things. At the number 17 spot on the list, I literally made a whole video dedicated on how to use these iron sights because they're so absolutely horrific. Here on the list, we have the G7. Now, even though I made a video, a pretty absolutely horrible video on how to use the G7 iron sights, I mean, still at the end of the day, these things are probably gonna screw you over. The default sights on the G7 is this U shape, and what makes it really bad is it's a pretty large U shape. Like, I don't know what you want to call these little pieces of metal, little prongs. If they were smaller, they would probably be easier to aim with, but for whatever reason, they're kind of long. Please, I beg you, do not watch the video on the G7 iron sights. It was one of my first videos on this channel. I had no clue how to commentate. It was a horrible video, but I'm probably gonna keep it on the channel for nostalgia purposes. Now, I have sniped the heck out of people with the G7 iron sights, but I don't know, it's probably a gift from God. It's probably never gonna happen again. Most likely, the only way that you're ever gonna hit people with the G7 iron sights is A, if you are smooching the people, if you shove the barrel in the face and you don't even need the sights, or B, you're an absolute legend at this game. You don't even need good sights. At number 16 on the list, we have the Prowler. Now, kind of luckily for the Prowler, there are kind of pay-to-win sights for this one. The default iron sights on the Prowler are similar to those that of the Devotion, but I think the Prowlers are just a little bit better just because it's an SMG. I think if you're using the Burst Prowler effectively, you're going to be shoving the barrel in the face of the enemies. I do have pretty decent success with the iron sights on the Prowler, but once you get into full auto mode and you're at kind of mid-range, these things are pretty much impossible to use. Ladies and gents, at number 15 on the list, we have the Wingman. Now, getting to this item on the list, I don't think these iron sights are horrific or bad by any means. I've had problems with using the Wingman, and one of the ways I sort of went about improving my game is just by using the iron sights every once in a while on the Wingman. But I feel with these, there's just a little bit too much in the way. There's just kind of a lot going on. In my opinion, you can certainly see success with the iron sights on the Wingman, but it's going to be a little bit difficult at times. I think if you pick up this gun, you're certainly going to see a lot of improvement if you use some sort of 1x to 2x sight. Next on the list, we have some iron sights that are pretty similar to the Wingmans, the RE45s. Even though these are similar to the last gun on the list, I think with the RE45, you get a little bit more vision. There's not quite as much in the way. People lately have been shredding with the RE45, and usually that's just when I pick it up off the drop, where I'm using it somewhere around mid-game or a little bit before mid-game, and a lot of times I'm using the iron sights. Still, as the Wingman, I think you're going to hugely benefit with some sort of optic on the RE, but most of the time you're going to drop the weapon before you actually get, you know, any sort of optic for it. Next on the list, we're going to talk about the L-Star. Now, the only reason that these iron sights made it so high on the list is just because I think the conveniently placed ELO dot on this is pretty okay, but then at the same time, you know, below that dot, there's a lot of blockage. But at the same time, when you're using the L-Star, I don't think you're going to have any sort of success using it at any sort of mid-range. You're going to be in pretty close range when using the L-Star effectively. So I think when you're in close range, the ELO sight on this is going to be pretty okay, but if you're trying to use the L-Star's iron sights at any sort of mid-range, it's going to be pretty horrible and slightly impossible. At number 12, we have a pretty horrific iron sight, but for its use, it's pretty okay as the L-Star. So here we have the EVA 8. Now, if these iron sights were on pretty much any gun other than the EVA 8s, they'd probably be the worst in Apex, but when I've used the iron sights on the EVA 8s, you know, in the rare occasions that I do, when I get into close range, these things work pretty okay. At number 11, these are kind of hit or miss iron sights for me. We have the Flatline. Now, the pay-to-win skin for this from a recent battle pass, I can't remember which season it was. I mean, I pretty much never use the default iron sights on the Flatline anymore, but I think with these things, the key to this is to make sure that you don't aim above the enemy and have them like crouch below the sights, because you're going to lose vision of them for just a second. But if you can manage to keep that recoil down to consistently pull down your aim when you're shooting with these iron sights, I think you're going to be pretty okay. At the number 10 spot on our list, we have the triple take. I think for what the triple take is, the iron sights on this weapon are pretty okay. I think what makes the iron sights and the triple take, you know, not with the top dogs, is that like the actual dot on this, it's not really a dot, it's kind of a bunch of lines. If there was just one beautiful little red dot as the actual sight on this, you know, I mean, it would be pretty solid. But I do kind of like how innovative and different the iron sights are on this. I think it works kind of well with the precision choke being default on the triple take. It kind of makes sense with the spread of the weapon and the shape of the actual iron sight lines. At number 9 on the list, I had a pretty tough time actually ranking this weapon. I wasn't too sure where to put it, but I think for its use, these iron sights are pretty okay. So anyways, my people, at number 9, we have the longbow. So even though there's a pretty disgusting metal U-shape on this thing, for its uses for sniping, for quick scoping, for whatever you may be doing, I think these things work out pretty okay. If these sights were on something like, say, the Volt, or a gun that had a decent bit of recoil, I think it would be ranked lower on the list. But for the sniper that the longbow is, I think these iron sights are gonna last you until you can find a sight if you actually choose to run the longbow. At number 8, we have the brand new iron sights to Apex, the Volts. Now, what I think makes these just a little bit tricky is that the Volt's recoil, it's mostly vertical, the recoil that it actually has. So I think if you can control that vertical recoil, pull that aim down pretty consistently, the iron sights on this are pretty epic. I just feel that the whole shape of these iron sights, you know, just really help to keep your target centered. Me personally, I think I have some pretty solid luck using the iron sights on the Volt. At number 7, we have another energy weapon, the Havoc. I actually do end up running the iron sights on the Havoc quite a bit when I'm using it, and it usually works out pretty well. The whole holographic circle on this, I mean, as far as aiming goes, as far as centering your target goes, I don't know, it's just pretty solid. It might sound a little bit crazy coming from me, but it almost seems that the holographic slash elo sight, or whatever this sight technically is, it could almost be a sight that you could pick up off the ground. I mean, it's pretty okay. At number 6 on the list, we have the pretty stereotypical pistol sight. This is the P2020s. So as long as you are plagued with using the P2020, the iron sight shouldn't be holding you back. If you're trying to laser people at mid-range with these, you're probably going to have some issues, but when you're in close range, these sights are very, very solid IMO. I do have what I would call a pretty decent clip here. I've already used this in a video, lasering someone at mid-range with the P2020 iron sights. Like, what can I say, people? I'll repeat it again. Pretty stereotypical iron sights. At number 5 on the list, these sights I do kind of have a love-hate relationship with. This is the R301. So while I was playing on PS4 with a controller, you know, kind of back towards the release date of Apex Legends, I absolutely loved these sights. But now more recently, now that the R301 has been kind of nerfed, these don't really work out the greatest for me. But regardless of those things, I do think the iron sights on this are some of the best in Apex Legends. I wish it was just a little red dot as the elo on this, but I think that'd be a little bit too OP. You know, when you pick the R301 up off the ground, you don't really have to worry about the sights that are on it. I think these ones are pretty top tier. At number 4 on the list, surprisingly, we have the Mozambique. Now, kind of like how I was talking about with the longbow, I really don't think the Mozambique's iron sights are the greatest, but for its use, I think they're pretty good. You know, hopefully you don't end up using the Mozambique without the hammer points, but once you get the hammer points on the Mozambique, I really don't think you have to worry about the optic too much. I like to do 1v1s personally, and when I do 1v1s, a lot of times I use the hammer point Mozambique, and when I'm actually doing these 1v1s, most of the time I won't actually run an optic. I'll just run the iron sights on the Mozambique. I just think for the spread on the Mozam, these sights are just pretty okay. They fit the gun really well. Moving into the top 3, these ones are going to start to be absolutely amazing. I love these default optics. So at number 3, we have the one, the only alternators optics. When you pick the alternator off the ground, I mean, it's decently ammo efficient given that it's a light ammo SMG. I think one of the reasons that the alternator is just such a decent gun to have off the drop is because of these iron sights. At number 2, I think these ones fit the gun so well. This is the Sentinel. Now, even though I think the iron sights on the alternator are just a little bit more clean, I think for the use for sniping, the Sentinels are just so very slightly better. My people, when I'm using these ones, I mean, I'm doing pretty okay sniping at medium range. What I think are the number 1 iron sights in all of Apex Legends, I use these ones over any sort of optic. This is really the only weapon that I will use the iron sights and not equip any sort of 1x, 2x, or anything on it. This is the Mastiffs. I think for the spread of the weapon, I think for just centering your target, these ones are absolutely perfect. I don't know if you feel me here, but when you're using these, it just helps with the spread. It helps you to center your targets just a little bit quicker. For the shotgun that the Mastiff is, I think these sights are the very best in all of Apex Legends. What do you think? Anyways, people, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to go follow my Twitch. I will link it in the description below. My peeps have been trying to up my Apex skills just a little bit lately. I'm gonna try to, you know, grow on Twitch, so it'd be really cool if you go hang out with me there and give me a follow. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, it'd be really cool if you go below this video and hit that subscribe button. Anyways, people, that'll be about it for me, the Alarmix, and I hope to see you in another video.